The arena was already shaking before Bruce Lee stepped through the curtain. Thousands of people filled the seats, their voices rolling through the building like thunder. Bright lights swept across the crowd. Camera flashes appeared everywhere. Ringside reporters leaned forward, waiting for something extraordinary to happen. Nobody knew that before the night was over, the entire arena would fall completely silent. Bruce Lee stood behind the curtain, dressed in his simple black martial arts uniform. He could hear the crowd. He could hear the announcer. And he could hear something else. A deep voice laughing from inside the arena. Bruce slowly turned his head. One of the event organizers approached him. "Bruce, there's a situation." Bruce raised an eyebrow. "What kind of situation?" The man hesitated. "The heavyweight champion is here." Bruce said nothing. The organizer continued. "He saw you warming up. He wants to challenge you." Bruce gave a small smile. "I didn't come here to fight him." "I know." The organizer looked nervous. "But he doesn't seem to care." From inside the arena came another wave of laughter. Then the announcer's voice exploded through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen." The crowd roared. "Tonight we have a very special guest." Bruce remained still behind the curtain. The announcer continued. "A man whose speed has amazed audiences around the world." The crowd grew louder. "Bruce Lee." The curtains opened. Bruce stepped into the light. The reaction was immediate. Thousands of people stood. Some cheered. Some shouted his name. Others simply stared. Bruce walked toward the ring with calm, measured steps. He wasn't the biggest man in the building. He wasn't even close. His body was lean, compact, and athletic. But there was something about the way he moved. Nothing was wasted. Not a step. Not a glance. Not a breath. He entered the ring. And then the music stopped. The announcer looked toward the opposite entrance. "Ladies and gentlemen." The crowd began to roar again. The reigning heavyweight champion. The enormous fighter walked into the arena. He was massive. His shoulders seemed almost too wide for his body. He wore a black wrestling singlet beneath heavy leather straps. Every step he took made the crowd react. He climbed into the ring and looked directly at Bruce. Then he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who believed he already knew how the story would end. He walked toward Bruce. Bruce didn't move. The champion stopped only a few feet away. "You're Bruce Lee." Bruce nodded. The champion looked him up and down. Then he laughed. "That's it." The crowd reacted with nervous laughter. Bruce remained calm. The champion pointed toward Bruce's chest. "You're supposed to be the great fighter everybody talks about." Bruce looked at the man's finger. Then at his eyes. "I never said that." The champion laughed again. "Maybe you didn't." He leaned closer. But everyone else did. The arena became louder. The champion turned toward the audience. Then he shouted, "People keep telling me this little man is fast." The crowd responded, "He's fast." The champion turned back toward Bruce. "But fast doesn't mean strong." Bruce said nothing. The champion raised his voice. "And strong beats fast." The audience erupted. Then came the sentence that changed the atmosphere. The champion pointed directly at Bruce. "You can't beat me." For a moment, Bruce simply stared at him. No anger. No fear. No dramatic reaction. Just silence. Then Bruce smiled slightly. The champion frowned. "What are you smiling about?" Bruce answered quietly. "You're very confident." "I should be." "Why?" The champion looked almost offended by the question. "Because I've fought men twice your size." Bruce nodded. "And did they beat you?" The champion laughed. "No." Bruce looked at him. "Then perhaps you haven't met the right opponent." The laughter disappeared. The champion's smile faded. For the first time, he looked at Bruce differently. The crowd sensed it. Something had changed. The announcer stepped between them. "Gentlemen, this is supposed to be a demonstration." The champion didn't take his eyes off Bruce. "It'll be a demonstration." Bruce nodded. "Then let's demonstrate." The audience exploded. The rules were simple. No weapons. No cheap shots. The fight would stop if either man was seriously hurt. But nobody in the arena really understood what they were about to witness. The champion walked to his corner. Bruce stood opposite him. A bell rang. The crowd erupted. The champion immediately moved forward. Bruce didn't. The champion took another step. Bruce still didn't move. "Come on," the champion shouted. Bruce watched him. His shoulders, his hips, his feet, his breathing, everything. The champion suddenly lunged. A massive right hand came toward Bruce's head. Bruce moved. Not backward. Sideways. The punch cut through empty air. The champion turned. Bruce was already behind him. The crowd screamed. The champion spun around. Bruce was standing several feet away. Calm. Almost expressionless. The champion's face tightened. "Lucky." Bruce said nothing. The champion charged again. This time, Bruce moved backward. One step. Two. Three. The champion kept coming. His fists moved like hammers. Bruce avoided each one by fractions of an inch. A punch passed beside his face. Another crossed his chest. A third nearly caught his shoulder. The audience was losing its mind. But Bruce wasn't fighting yet. He was watching, learning. Every movement told him something. The champion always planted his right foot before throwing his strongest punch. His left shoulder rose slightly before a hook. And whenever he missed, his weight shifted forward for a fraction of a second. Most people wouldn't notice. Bruce did. Then the champion stopped. He was breathing harder. "What are you doing?" Bruce answered. "Watching." The champion frowned. "Watching what?" Bruce smiled. "You." The audience laughed. The champion didn't. He lowered his hands. "You think this is funny?" "No." Bruce's expression became serious. "I think you're showing me everything I need to know." The champion's eyes widened. Then he charged. This time he didn't throw a punch. He reached for Bruce. His enormous hands closed around Bruce's upper body. The crowd gasped. For 1 second, it looked like Bruce had made a terrible mistake. The champion lifted him slightly. "You're fast," he growled. Bruce struggled against the grip. "But you're not strong enough." The champion began squeezing. Bruce's feet moved. His shoulders turned. He wasn't trying to overpower the man. He was looking for space. 1 inch. Then another. His right foot shifted. His body rotated. The champion's grip loosened for just a moment. Bruce slipped free. The champion turned around. Bruce was gone. The crowd exploded again. Bruce had escaped without trying to match the champion's strength. The champion stared at him. Something unfamiliar appeared in his eyes. Confusion. A moment for everyone watching. Before we continue, tell me something. If you were standing inside that arena and a heavyweight champion twice your size told you, "You can't beat me," would you step forward or walk away? Yes or no? And don't forget to asterisk like this story, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Are you watching from New York, London, Los Angeles, India, somewhere else? Write your country or city in the comments. Because what happened next was the moment the champion finally realized that Bruce Lee wasn't trying to fight him the way everyone expected. The champion wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked toward his corner, then back at Bruce. Again. Bruce nodded. The champion raised his hands. This time he didn't rush. He waited. Bruce waited too. The arena became strangely quiet. Thousands of people were watching two men standing almost perfectly still. Then someone in the audience shouted, "Fight!" Another person shouted, "Get a chime." The champion smiled. Bruce didn't. Seconds passed. 5, 10, 15. The champion finally moved. A jab. Bruce avoided it. A second punch. Bruce stepped away. A hook. Bruce ducked. Then the champion changed direction. Bruce moved with him. The champion attacked again. Bruce blocked. For the first time, Bruce made contact. A short, sharp strike. The champion stepped back. The crowd gasped. The champion touched the spot where Bruce had hit him. He looked at his hand. Then at Bruce. "You actually hit me." Bruce answered, "You gave me an opening." The champion's jaw tightened. "I'll give you one more." He charged. Bruce waited. The champion's right foot planted. His shoulder moved. Bruce saw it. The punch came. Bruce stepped inside. His hand moved faster than the audience could follow. One strike. Then another. Then a third. None were meant to destroy the champion. They were meant to disrupt his balance. The giant man's body shifted. His feet crossed for half a second. Bruce moved away. The champion stumbled. He caught himself against the ropes. The arena fell silent. The heavyweight champion slowly looked up. Bruce was standing in the center of the ring. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't mocking him. He was waiting. The champion's breathing became heavier. "Do it again." Bruce shook his head. "Why?" "Because I want to see it." "See what?" "How fast you really are." Bruce looked at him. "You don't want to see how fast I am." The champion frowned. "What do you mean?" Bruce's voice became quieter. "You want to prove you're stronger than me." The champion said nothing. Bruce continued. "But this isn't about strength." The crowd listened. Bruce took one step forward. "It's about timing." The champion's eyes narrowed. Bruce took another step. "It's about distance." Another step. And knowing when to move. The champion suddenly shouted, "Enough!" He charged. This time Bruce didn't retreat. He stepped toward him. The audience screamed. Two bodies collided in the center of the ring. The champion swung. Bruce disappeared beneath the punch. The champion turned. Bruce was already at his side. A quick strike. A step. Another strike. A pivot. The champion tried to grab him. Bruce slipped away. The champion swung again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. The heavyweight champion was getting exhausted. Bruce wasn't. The difference was becoming obvious. The champion was trying to catch Bruce. Bruce was controlling where the champion moved. And slowly, the audience began to understand. The smaller man wasn't surviving. He was dictating the fight. The champion backed toward the ropes. Bruce stopped. He looked at him. For the first time that night, Bruce's face showed something close to sympathy. The champion looked exhausted. But pride wouldn't let him stop. He raised his fists. Bruce lowered his hands. "Come on," the champion whispered. Bruce nodded. "Okay." The champion launched forward with everything he had. The entire arena rose to its feet. Bruce waited until the last possible moment. Then, one step, a turn, a perfectly timed movement. The champion's momentum carried him past Bruce. He stumbled. Bruce placed one hand against his shoulder. Not a shove. Just enough. The champion lost his balance and crashed onto the canvas. Boom. Silence. Absolute silence. Nobody moved. Nobody shouted. The champion lay on his back, staring at the lights above him. Bruce stood beside him. The referee rushed forward. The audience waited. The champion slowly sat up. He looked at Bruce. And for the first time all night, there was no arrogance in his face. Only disbelief. Bruce extended his hand. The giant champion stared at it. Then he grabbed Bruce's hand. Bruce pulled him to his feet. The crowd finally erupted. But Bruce leaned toward him and quietly said, "You were never weak." The champion looked confused. Bruce continued, "You were just fighting the wrong fight." The champion lowered his head. Thousands of people watched in silence, because they had come expecting to see the biggest man win. Instead, they had witnessed something much harder to understand. They had seen a man discover that size wasn't the same as control. Strength wasn't the same as skill. And confidence wasn't the same as certainty. Bruce turned toward the crowd. The arena erupted again. But Bruce simply bowed. The champion stood behind him. And although the audience would remember the fall for years, the champion would remember something else. The moment Bruce looked at him before the fight and smiled. Because Bruce had never been afraid. He had already begun studying the fight before the first punch was thrown. And that was the lesson nobody in the arena would ever forget. The most dangerous fighter isn't always the strongest person in the room. Sometimes it's the person who understands exactly when to move. One last question. If you were watching that moment live, what would you have done? Would you have believed Bruce Lee could defeat a heavyweight champion? Yes or no? Hit like if you would have stayed until the final second. Subscribe for more cinematic Bruce Lee stories and tell us in the comments. Where are you watching from right now? Your city, your country. Because somewhere around the world, another viewer is watching the exact same story and wondering whether they would have stepped into that ring. And Bruce Lee's answer was already waiting. Don't fight the strength, understand it. The crowd was still roaring. Bruce Lee stood near the center of the ring while the heavyweight champion remained beside him, breathing heavily. For several seconds, neither man spoke. The champion looked around the arena. Thousands of faces stared back at him. Some were shocked. Some were cheering for Bruce. Others looked as though they still couldn't believe what they had witnessed. The champion slowly walked toward his corner. But before he reached it, he stopped. He turned around. Bruce. Bruce looked at him. The champion hesitated. Then he said something nobody expected. Do it again. The crowd suddenly became quiet. Bruce frowned. Why? I want to know if it was luck. A murmur moved through the arena. Bruce looked at the man for several seconds. Then he nodded. Fine. The referee immediately stepped forward. Are you sure? The champion nodded. I've never walked away from a challenge. Bruce looked at him. Neither have I. The audience erupted. The champion removed his gloves. Bruce remained where he was. There would be no official match this time. No announcement. No dramatic introduction. Just two fighters trying to answer one question. Was Bruce's victory really skill? Or had the heavyweight simply underestimated him? The champion raised his fists. Bruce raised his hands. The arena became silent again. A camera operator moved closer. Reporters leaned over the ropes. Nobody wanted to miss what happened next. The champion took one slow step forward. Bruce watched his feet. Another step. Bruce watched his shoulders. Another. Bruce watched his breathing. The champion suddenly attacked. Bruce moved. The champion stopped. Bruce stopped. The champion attacked again. Bruce moved again. Then the champion changed direction. Bruce changed with him. The champion suddenly smiled. You're reading me. Bruce answered. I'm listening. The champion laughed. Listening. Bruce nodded. Your body tells me what you're going to do. The champion shook his head. Not this time. He attacked with a completely different rhythm. A quick left. A sudden right. A low movement. Then a powerful forward step. Bruce was forced backward. For the first time, the champion had changed his strategy. Bruce's expression became serious. The crowd noticed. The champion noticed too. You didn't expect that. Bruce smiled. No. The champion grinned. Finally, he attacked again. Bruce blocked. The force pushed him backward. The audience gasped. The champion came forward. Another strike. Bruce slipped away. Another. Bruce blocked. Another. Bruce moved. The champion wasn't trying to catch Bruce anymore. He was trying to trap him. Slowly, he forced Bruce toward the corner. The crowd became louder. The champion saw the ropes behind Bruce. He smiled. Nowhere to run. Bruce looked at the ropes. Then at the champion. You think that's what I'm doing? The champion charged. Bruce waited. The punch came. At the last possible moment, Bruce dropped his shoulder and moved to the side. The champion struck the corner post. A loud metallic sound echoed through the arena. The champion turned. Bruce was already behind him. But instead of attacking, Bruce simply said, "You keep trying to win with your hands." The champion turned around. Bruce continued, "Try using your eyes." The champion stared at him. "What?" Bruce pointed toward the floor. "Your feet tell me everything." The champion looked down. For the first time, he understood. Every time he prepared his strongest attack, his weight shifted. Just slightly. Almost invisible. But Bruce had noticed. The champion shook his head. "You've been watching my feet this whole time." Bruce nodded. "Your hands are fast." He paused. "But your feet are honest." The arena exploded with cheers. The champion laughed. Not because he was amused. Because he finally respected the man standing in front of him. A question for everyone watching. Let me ask you something. If you were in that arena and Bruce Lee told a heavyweight champion that his feet were giving away every move, would you believe him? Yes or no? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. And most importantly, tell us, where are you watching from right now? Write your city and country in the comments. Let's see how many different places are watching Bruce Lee tonight. The champion stepped backward. He took a deep breath. Then something unexpected happened. He lowered his hands. Bruce lowered his too. The champion looked toward his coach. The coach was standing outside the ring. Their eyes met. The coach slowly shook his head. But the champion wasn't listening. He turned back toward Bruce. "I've spent my whole life becoming stronger." Bruce said nothing. "I thought strength was enough." Bruce nodded. "It can be." The champion looked confused. "Then why wasn't it enough tonight?" Bruce answered. "Because you tried to make strength do the work of speed." The champion looked down. Bruce continued. "Strength without control is dangerous." He paused. "Speed without control is also dangerous." The champion looked at him. "So what wins?" Bruce smiled. "Control." The champion absorbed the word. Then he asked, "Control of what?" Bruce looked around the arena. "Yourself." The crowd became quiet. Bruce continued. "Before you control your opponent, you have to control your fear." The champion's expression changed. Bruce had touched something deeper than fighting. The champion had been undefeated for years. He had built his entire identity around being the strongest man in every room. And tonight, for the first time, someone had forced him to question it. The champion slowly nodded. Then he extended his hand. Bruce shook it. The audience applauded. But the night wasn't over. Because a reporter near the ring shouted a question. "Bruce." Bruce turned. "How did you do it?" Another reporter shouted. "What was your secret?" Someone else yelled. "Were you afraid of him?" Bruce looked toward the crowd. Then he smiled. "I was afraid." The arena went silent. The champion looked at him. Bruce continued. "Fear is normal." He paused. "But fear doesn't have to make your decisions." The crowd erupted. The champion nodded slowly. Those words stayed with him. Later that evening, the arena began to empty. The lights were dimmed. Workers started removing equipment. The roar of thousands of people had disappeared. Only a few people remained. Bruce was sitting alone near the edge of the ring. His hands were wrapped. His face was calm. The heavyweight champion walked toward him. He was no longer wearing his fighting gear. He looked like a completely different man. He stopped beside Bruce. "You know something." Bruce looked up. "I thought you were arrogant." Bruce smiled. "I thought you were." The champion laughed. For the first time that night, there was no tension. Only respect. The champion sat beside him. How long did it take you to become that fast? Bruce thought for a moment. A long time. Years. Every day. The champion looked surprised. Every day. Bruce nodded. You don't become better by waiting for the perfect moment. The champion looked toward the empty arena. What do you do when you're tired? Bruce answered. Train. When you're angry. Train. When you're afraid. Bruce looked at him. Especially then. The champion smiled. You really believe that? Bruce stood. I don't believe in being perfect. The champion looked at him. I believe in becoming better. Then Bruce walked away. The champion remained seated. He looked at the empty ring. Hours earlier, thousands of people had watched him fall. But strangely, he didn't feel defeated anymore. For the first time in years, he felt free. He had spent so long trying to prove that nobody could beat him. Bruce had shown him something completely different. You don't become great by proving you're better than everyone else. You become great by discovering how much more you still have to learn. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Newspapers carried photographs of Bruce standing beside the fallen champion. Reporters debated what had happened. Some called it an upset. Some called it an exhibition. Others called it impossible. But one photograph became famous. It showed Bruce standing calmly in the center of the ring while the massive champion was getting back to his feet. The photograph didn't show the speed. It didn't show the technique. It didn't show the fear. But it captured one thing perfectly. The difference between two men. One had believed victory came from being stronger. The other had understood that victory began with understanding. And somewhere, in a small training room far away from the arena, another young martial artist was looking at that photograph. He stared at Bruce, then at the champion, and he whispered, "How did he do that?" That question would inspire him to train harder. Not because Bruce Lee had beaten a bigger man, but because Bruce had shown the world that limitations were often created in the mind before they were ever created in the body. The final challenge. Several weeks later, the heavyweight champion returned to his training gym. His coach expected him to train exactly as before. Heavy weights, heavy punches, heavy bags. But something had changed. The champion walked past the largest punching bag in the room. Instead, he stood in front of a mirror. He watched his feet. He moved slowly. 1 step, 2, 3. He practiced changing direction. Then he smiled. His coach walked over. "What are you doing?" The champion answered. "Learning." The coach raised an eyebrow. "Learning what?" The champion remembered Bruce's words. "Listening to my body." The coach smiled. "Bruce Lee changed you." The champion shook his head. "No." He looked at his reflection. "I changed myself." And that was the real victory. Not the fall. Not the crowd. Not the headlines. The real victory was that one night in a packed arena, a man who believed he had nothing left to learn discovered that he was still a student. And Bruce Lee had taught him the lesson without ever needing to humiliate him. If you think Bruce Lee's greatest weapon was not his fists, but his mind, hit like. If you would have stepped into that ring, comment, "I would." And before you leave, tell us, where are you watching from? City and country. Because every comment is a reminder that stories like this can travel farther than any arena. And if you want to know what happened when the heavyweight champion came back with a completely different strategy, and whether Bruce Lee could survive his most dangerous challenge yet, stay with the story. Because the next time they met, the champion wasn't planning to fight Bruce Lee the same way. And Bruce knew it. Before the first punch was thrown, 3 weeks had passed since the night that changed everything. The photographs were still appearing in newspapers. Bruce Lee standing calmly in the center of the ring. The heavyweight champion on the canvas. The crowd frozen in disbelief. People had begun telling the story in different ways. Some said Bruce had embarrassed the champion. Others said the champion had simply been too slow. Some claimed the whole thing was staged. But the heavyweight champion knew the truth. He had lost. And more importantly, he knew exactly why. Bruce hadn't beaten his strength. He had beaten his assumptions. That realization followed the champion everywhere. At the gym, at restaurants, even when he tried to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he remembered Bruce's words. Your hands are fast, but your feet are honest. So the champion changed everything. He stopped relying only on power. He began studying movement. He practiced balance. He worked on timing. He trained himself to stop telegraphing his attacks. And after 3 weeks, he sent Bruce a message. There was no insult. No challenge for the newspapers. Just one sentence. One more time. Bruce read the message quietly. His student stood beside him. Are you going to accept? Bruce looked at the paper. Then he smiled. Of course. Why? Bruce folded the message. Because he's different now. The second meeting took place in a much smaller training hall. There were no thousands of spectators. No giant entrance. No screaming crowd. Only a few trainers, several reporters, and a handful of invited observers. The heavyweight champion entered first. Bruce arrived a few minutes later. The two men looked at each other. The champion smiled. You look calm. Bruce nodded. You look faster. The champion laughed. I've been working. So have I. The champion stepped closer. This time, I'm not going to chase you. Bruce's eyes narrowed. Good. Why? Because now we can actually learn something. The champion smiled. Then he removed his jacket. Bruce stepped onto the training floor. There was no ring this time. No ropes. No corner. Just open space. The instructor raised his hand. Begin. The champion didn't move. Bruce didn't move. 5 seconds passed. 10. 15. The champion's eyes remained fixed on Bruce. Bruce watched him carefully. The first fight had been about speed. This one was about patience. Suddenly, the champion moved. Bruce shifted. But the champion stopped halfway. Bruce stopped too. The champion smiled. I almost had you. Bruce nodded. Almost. Then Bruce moved forward. The champion immediately reacted. Bruce stopped. The champion had followed him. Bruce smiled. You learned. The champion answered. So did you. They began moving around each other. No wild punches. No unnecessary movements. Just two fighters measuring distance. The room became silent. The champion suddenly attacked. Bruce moved to the side. But instead of turning, the champion stopped and changed direction. Bruce barely avoided the second movement. The champion's hand passed close to Bruce's shoulder. Bruce stepped backward. The champion smiled. "Got you." Bruce shook his head. "No." The champion looked confused. Bruce pointed toward the floor. "You moved too early." The champion looked down. Bruce continued. "You're faster now." He paused. "But you're still thinking about beating me." The champion stared at him. Bruce said quietly, "Stop thinking." The champion took a deep breath. Then he closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his entire expression had changed. No anger, no pride, no need to prove anything. He simply moved. Bruce's eyes widened slightly. For the first time, the champion moved without hesitation. Bruce stepped away. The champion followed. Bruce changed direction. The champion followed again. Bruce accelerated. The champion stayed with him. The room erupted. For several seconds, the two men moved so quickly that some of the observers could barely follow. Then Bruce stopped. The champion stopped too. They stood facing each other. Bruce smiled. "Now you're fighting." The champion smiled back. "No." He shook his head. "Now I'm learning." Bruce nodded. And that was the moment the rivalry ended. Not because one man had defeated the other, but because both finally understood what the other was trying to teach. A question for you. Before we continue to the final moment, imagine you are standing in that training hall. The heavyweight champion has changed his entire fighting style. Bruce Lee is facing him again. Who do you think wins this time? Bruce Lee or the heavyweight champion? Write your answer in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves Bruce Lee. Most importantly, tell us where you're watching from. Write your city and country below. Let's see how far this story has traveled. The two fighters continued. But now there was something different between them. Respect. The champion no longer saw Bruce as a small man trying to prove himself. He saw him as a teacher. And Bruce no longer saw the champion as an obstacle. He saw him as a student who had finally learned how to listen. After several minutes, the instructor raised his hand. Enough. Both men stopped. The champion was breathing heavily. Bruce was breathing steadily. The champion laughed. "I thought I would finally catch you." Bruce smiled. "You did." The champion froze. "What?" Bruce pointed toward his shoulder. "You touched me." The champion looked at his hand. Then at Bruce. "I did." Bruce nodded. "You improved." The champion smiled. "But you still won." Bruce shook his head. "No." The champion frowned. "What do you mean?" Bruce looked directly into his eyes. Today there was no winner. The room became quiet. Bruce continued. "Last time you wanted to prove you were stronger than me." He paused. "Today you wanted to become better." The champion lowered his head. "And that's why today was different." The champion extended his hand. Bruce shook it. The room filled with applause. Not the wild roar of an arena. Something quieter. Something deeper. Respect. Later that evening, Bruce stood outside the training hall. The sun was beginning to disappear behind the buildings. His student approached him. "Bruce." Bruce turned. "Yes." "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Were you ever worried about him?" Bruce smiled. "Of course." The student looked surprised. You were? Bruce nodded. A man who isn't afraid can be dangerous. The student thought about that. Then why weren't you afraid? Bruce looked toward the setting sun. I was. He paused. I just didn't let fear choose for me. The student remained silent. Bruce continued. People think courage means having no fear. He shook his head. That's not courage. Then what is? Bruce looked at him. Courage is feeling fear and still making the right decision. The student nodded slowly. Bruce turned toward the road. Then he said something that his student would remember for the rest of his life. Never measure a person by how big they look. He paused. Measure them by what they can control. Years later, people would still tell stories about that night. Some would exaggerate the fight. Some would change the details. Some would claim Bruce had defeated the biggest man alive. Others would argue that it never happened exactly as described. But the lessons survived every version. Because the story was never really about a giant man losing to a smaller man. It was about a man discovering that the thing he believed made him unbeatable was also the thing making him predictable. The heavyweight champion had believed that size gave him certainty. Bruce taught him that certainty could become a weakness. The champion had believed power solved every problem. Bruce showed him that power without timing could be wasted. And Bruce himself understood something equally important. Speed alone wasn't enough. Technique wasn't enough. Strength wasn't enough. Even intelligence wasn't enough. A true fighter had to bring all of them together. Body, mind, timing, discipline, and above all, control. The last lesson. Months later, the heavyweight champion was training a young fighter. The young man was impatient. He wanted to hit harder, move faster, become stronger. The champion watched him for several minutes. Then he stopped the training. You're doing it wrong. The young fighter looked confused. What am I doing wrong? You're trying to become dangerous. The young fighter nodded. Yes. The champion smiled. Don't. The young man frowned. Why? Become disciplined first. The young fighter didn't understand. The champion walked toward him. Strength without discipline hurts people. He pointed toward the young man's feet. Speed without balance makes you fall. Then he pointed toward his head. And confidence without humility makes you blind. The young fighter asked, Who taught you that? The champion looked toward the wall. There was a photograph hanging there. Bruce Lee. The champion smiled. A man smaller than me. And perhaps that was Bruce Lee's greatest victory. Not knocking down a heavyweight. Not silencing a crowd. Not proving that a smaller fighter could defeat a larger one. His greatest victory was making another fighter rethink what strength really meant. Because anyone can become obsessed with winning. Anyone can chase power. Anyone can demand respect. But very few people are willing to admit, I still have something to learn. The heavyweight champion had learned that lesson. And Bruce Lee had taught it without needing to destroy him. One final moment. Imagine the arena again. Thousands of people. Bright lights. The heavyweight champion standing across from Bruce. The champion points at him. You can't beat me. The crowd goes silent. Bruce looks at him. No anger. No fear. No arrogance. Just a calm smile. Then Bruce says, "I don't need to be stronger than you." The champion waits. Bruce takes one step forward. "I only need to understand you." The bell rings, and the story begins. Not with the biggest man winning, not with the smallest man proving himself, but with one simple truth. The greatest opponent you will ever face isn't always the person standing across from you. Sometimes it's the limitation you've convinced yourself you cannot overcome. Bruce Lee understood that. And that's why, even decades later, his philosophy continues to inspire people who have never stepped inside a ring. Because the lesson was never simply about fighting. It was about life. When the world tells you that you're too small, too weak, too inexperienced, too late, remember the lesson of that silent arena. Don't fight the world on its terms. Learn, adapt, move, and when the moment comes, be ready. If this story inspired you, like the video and subscribe for more cinematic stories. And before you leave, answer one final question. What matters more in a fight, strength, speed, or intelligence? Write strength, speed, or intelligence in the comments. And tell us where you're watching from. Your city and country. Because somewhere tonight, thousands of people are watching this story from completely different corners of the world. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. Bruce Lee stepped into that arena as the smaller man. But he walked away, proving something much bigger. You don't have to be the biggest person in the room to make the biggest impact. Sometimes all you need is the courage to step forward when everyone else expects you to step back.